Hey everyone, welcome back to Luminous Arts. If this is your first time tuning in, this is a conversational series where I sit down with new media artists from across the spectrum with the goal of giving public voice to the people behind the most amazing examples of visual and interactive art. In this industry, it's really common to see something that inspires you on Instagram or on a blog. Find the name of an artist or a crew responsible, and then have them remain a complete mystery. Who are the people who make these installations come to life? Where are they from? What do they love about the work that they do? And what drives them crazy? These are the questions that I want to answer as I speak with some of the community's most prolific names. In this episode, I sit down with Christopher Schardt, creator of the Firmament LED installation and a prominent light artist. He's spent much of his artistic career making pieces for display at the Burning Man Arts Festival, and we ended up spending much of this episode discussing the intricacies of making light art installations for that venue. Our discussion moves from the politics of creating art in the Playa, how he fits into the overall Burning Man scene, and where we see Burning Man art headed in the future. It was an interesting conversation with a true veteran, and we had a lot of fun drinking beer and talking about our respective experiences. I hope you enjoy. And I'm gonna start out by introducing you, Christopher Schardt, maker of LED Labs and the Firmament light installation out on the Playa. Did I say it right? Firmament?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's kind of what you're known best for, right?
Firmament and now Paraluna.
Paraluna.
Yeah, my shtick seems to have become making immersive LED environments with classical music. That's kind of the thing that I've fallen into and that I'm known for, because not only do I do that with these large pieces that have been seen at Burning Man and other festivals, but the piece that I had in the Smithsonian for the No Spectators, The Art of Burning Man show was also did the same thing, just on a much smaller scale. That was a piece called Nova.
Sure. Well, to rewind a little bit, you're an LED light artist. That's kind of like the category you would fall into. And you've been doing this for a while, yeah?
Yeah. I mean,
I was looking at your website, and it's like there's stuff dating back to 2002.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that I was an LED artist back then. In fact, the LED technology that existed back then did not make it easy. I like to say, the cute thing I like to say is that I've transitioned from being a programmer who does art for fun to being an artist who does programming for fun. And that's really the truth. An awful lot of times the programming is the most fun part of what I do.
Yeah.
As far as Burning Man art goes, I've been doing it since the year 2000.
Going to Burning Man or making art for Burning Man?
Making art for Burning Man. I've been going to Burning Man since '98 and making fairly large scale pieces since 2000, and they have involved motors and engines and propane and EL wire and big aluminum towers and all kinds of things.
As one does for the Playa.
Yeah, well, one's first project is always the one that you think is like so big. Oh my God, this thing's 12 feet tall, and you take it out to the Playa and it's tiny. Right. It's just a postage stamp. So my second big piece for Burning Man was actually an art car, but my third piece was was called Yantra, which was a 40-foot tall tower, and that was big. That actually rocked, and in fact, I have photographs of that year, which was 2003, that shows that after the man and the tower had burned, Yantra was the tallest thing out there. I was very happy. I'm very happy about that indeed.
You got to get that status marker in there somehow.
These days, no way. These days everything is so damn big that you'd have to really, you'd have to work really hard to be the tallest thing.
Well, it's funny, man, because you see installations every year that are clearly trying to be like the biggest thing at Burning Man, and I almost
you mean like aviation wise?
Or I mean that is a prime example, yes. But I think in general it's it's like a marker. You always have like a bunch of people going out there trying to be the most extravagant or like the biggest party, like the biggest rager. You've got the ends of the Esplanade, and they're just traditionally been like the biggest thing. But now you go around and the entire Esplanade and that entire 10 o'clock side is just, it's like a mega rave. Like last year I was biking between the two tips.
You mean going down the 10 o'clock road, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's by design. I mean, ever since, say, 2002, they put all of the major sound camps on the 2 o'clock road and on the 10 o'clock road with the instruction, face your speakers out, motherfucker.
Yeah.
Just like, don't face them into the city.
Sure.
And that worked most of the time.
Because the sound systems have become obscenely large.
Right, but
They're so big.
Well, maybe I don't spend enough time on 10 and 2, but in my opinion, the center of cachet has moved from those large sound camps to vehicles.
Sure.
I mean, everyone and their brother, as you should know, wants to make a large, sound vehicle, and and people don't seem to really care about those camps anymore. I mean, maybe they do. I don't know.
I think that what's happened is the camps are almost like fortresses of sound, right? And if you're kind of just like a, I don't even know how to say this nicely, but like a Coachella style, party person, kind of like a normie who like goes out to the Playa and they're like, oh yeah, Opulent Temple is going to be crazy tonight, or like whatever, the Root Society's going off. They've got Carl Cox playing, or like whoever it is. Those are kind of like the massive parties that just are massive parties all week long. And then the art cars are kind of their own thing. It's its own art form at this point, where it's just a different canvas to paint on. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like you've got your mega fortresses, of sound, being the big camps on the Esplanade on the 10 o'clock road, and then you've got your deep art installation pieces, which are pieces that are purely art pieces. They're there for art's sake. And then you've got vehicles, which are it's another canvas, to produce art that is roadworthy on the Playa is and that's why I'm attracted to it. It's a technical challenge.
Right. And I think it bears mentioning that art cars have been around for decades, and Burning Man, they started getting big in the year 2002.
That was before I even went to Burning Man.
Yeah, Burning Man in 2002, the theme was the floating world. And a couple of guys got the idea to make a really large thing for the floating world. So one group of people made Contessa, La Contessa, the great big galleon.
That was my favorite art car when I first went to Burning Man.
And then another guy, Tom Kennedy, got the idea of doing the big whale, the big white whale. Guess how many sound systems were involved in both of those?
I don't know.
0.
Yeah, sure.
There was nothing to do with sound. It was, in fact, a piece of art.
Well, don't you think that's because art cars started as art pieces and they became...
I'm saying that maybe I'm betraying my prejudice, but I'm actually saying that's kind of the way it should be. They should be pieces of art. They shouldn't be mobile party barges.
Sure.
And even though plenty of art mutant vehicles out there are beautiful, they seem to always have some massive sound component, and to me that kind of diminishes the value of the pure art aspect of the vehicle.
Well, I think there's a cult of personality that goes along with any massive project where the patron of that project feels the need to accent that art piece with a well-known DJ. It's cult of personality.
Of course, I mean? and it may not even be that it's the well-known DJ. They simply want to have just, it's gotten silly. We have this arms race going on, funded by billionaires to see who can have the baddest sound system.
Sure.
I mean, absolutely, that's what's going on. And not to mention, sometimes it's fun. I think it's fun. It's fun to dance to an art car sometimes. I just kind of wish that every art car wasn't a party barge.
Well, I agree with that. And I also wish that every art car wasn't like a stroboscopic spasm of LED light, But I think there's an art form to big sound, because I know some of those audio guys, and they're very serious about their sound. The guys that worked with us on The Sanctuary, it was an insane sound system, but the emphasis was on clarity of sound. And I heard over and over and over again at front of house, people coming up and being like, dude, I can stand 10 feet from those speakers and have a conversation with my friend. And I'm not a sound guy. I don't know anything about sound, but I noticed that when I would go, you know, back to board the car or whatever. It was, I could walk right past those speakers and it was so clear. And so, you know, and that's cool. That's an artistic technical challenge that I can respect. So I agree that there is sound pollution on the Playa, 100%. And I also agree that there is crazy light pollution on the Playa, 100%. And I think that artists are pushing the boundary in both regards, and they're having to compete with a more polluted environment on the Playa to express themselves artistically.
Well, you can also argue that there's participant pollution. I mean, you know,
yes.
I remember back in like 2012 going out on a Thursday night, and that was the year there was that stupid Facebook thing. There was like a like button, like a hand that it was the Facebook, you know, button push hand.
What year was this?
I can't remember. But anyway, I was sitting on a lame art piece that you know, on more or less a straight line between the 2 o'clock corner and the 10 o'clock corner. And it was Thursday night, and me and a friend were sitting there looking at the crowd, and it was unrelenting, the number of people that were going across the Playa right there. And I'm like, this is Thursday night. This is crazy. You know, wow. I just couldn't believe there was that kind of population already kind of going. And just like the number of people out there was crazy. You know, well, if you sell 74,000 tickets to an event, you know, that's what you get.
Sure.
You know, you get an awful lot of people. And we're you know, as you know, Burning Man is in a moment of truth. Basically, it looks like the BLM wants to shut the event down.
Yeah.
And one of
I don't think the BLM wants to shut the event down. I think the BLM is pushing as far as they can go to see how much funding how much of that pie they can absorb.
I was in deep conversation with some people at Burning Man about this, and I kept on getting them to tell me, what's going on? What's going on? You must be having conversations with people at the BLM. You guys, you know, you've more or less been on cordial terms with them for decades. You know, what's going on? And they said, we don't know. We do not know. And they're, you know, we don't know what they're after. Yes, this could be a negotiating ploy. Yes, it could also be.
It sounds like a money grab, man, to me, because I don't think the BLM has anything to gain from shutting down Burning Man. Burning Man props up the economy of a region that would have nothing without Burning Man.
But imagine that somebody from Trump land, someone from Ryan Zinke or his successor, you know, kind of decided that they were going to, you know, from sitting there in Washington, D.C., having never been to Burning Man, just basically say we're going to mess with this event. We're going to give it such crazy conditions that it's going to fall apart. And they don't care. The people in Washington, they don't care about the funding of the Winnemucca office. I know the Winnemucca office doesn't want to shut it down, but they're not in charge. The people in Washington are in charge. Do you really
think that anybody in the administration is even paying attention to Burning? It seems like the administration has a lot on their plate right now.
There are some people who are seriously messed up in the American, you know, executive branch, you know, and I think that they are trying to win a culture war. And I think that anything that flies against their idea of Mar-a-Lago being, you know, like the pinnacle of Western culture, I think, yeah, they want to shut it down.
Interesting.
I know
it's a little bit conspiratorial, but I hear what you're saying.
But I know people who know Ryan Zinke well, and they're like, yeah, he just doesn't like those people. You know, and he never did it, but, you know, so it may be his successor. Anyway, there's another possibility, which is that simply someone came into a position of power in the BLM who had never been to Burning Man, probably never even been to Nevada, and looked at some of these problems like, oh, there's trash on the freeway. Oh, well, of course, just get dumpsters. Just get a bunch of dumpsters. That'd be no problem. And, oh, there are people sneaking into the event. Oh, we'll just get, like, barriers. The barriers one is particularly ridiculous. I don't know if you saw this figure, but Burning Man actually, for grins, went and inquired with a company that rents those traffic barriers, like what it would take. First of all, the cost was in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, I think, maybe even the millions, but lots and lots of money. Second of all, not enough traffic barriers exist in Nevada to fulfill the one. You know what I'm talking about?
The Jersey barriers, yeah.
Just for the purpose of this recording, we're talking about making it so that there are those solid barriers, either made of concrete or filled with water, completely surrounding the gate road and surrounding the entire city. It's something like 12 or 13 miles of these barriers. Not only is it incredibly expensive to rent them, they don't exist. There's not that quantity doesn't exist in Nevada, and if we were to try to make them, this one company in Reno that makes them, it would take 149 days. Oh, I'm sorry, 1,400 days.
Wow.
In other words, it would take years.
So it's basically ridiculous.
It's basically ridiculous. And so what might have happened is that some greenhorn got into a position of power in the BLM where they said, well, this is a problem happening here. This obviously you need traffic barriers. So we don't know. We don't know what's going on.
Are you involved? It sounds like you're pretty invested in this. It sounds like you're pretty close with the BLM and pretty close with the org.
Well, I'm not close with the BLM. I did know people in the BLM back in the years 99, 2000, 2001, 2002. That's because my first involvement with Burning Man was volunteering with the cleanup effort.
Yeah.
In fact, in the year 2000, I was in charge of the lime sweeps. It was the first year that the lime sweeps were ever successful of the first inspection. And so I got to know a lot of the BLM people then, and they were really cool. I mean, well, with one exception. They were cool people, and I had a rapport with them, and they just wanted the Playa cleaned up. And as you probably know, probably your listeners know as well, Burning Man has done an absolutely insanely successful job at cleaning up ever since. I mean, it's just amazing what we do out there. So invested? No. Do I know the characters? Yes. Do I know the people at Burning Man? Yes. I count most all of them as my friends, and we all want it to keep going. I do have. I mean, we're getting far afield from LED art, but I do have one.
Let's go on the
I
tangent,
do have
man.
one little idea though, which is that if in fact Burning Man gets shut down for 1 year, 2 years, it brings up some interesting possibilities. Of course, first, the obvious one is that the BLM realizes what it's like to go through a year without Burning Man.
Sure. Well, that's what
and they scream.
That's what I'm saying, man. There's so much money and resources that come into that area because of Burning Man.
Oh, I know.
It would shut down those communities.
Right, but the people who are behind this are not Nevada people, I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure it's something from Washington. I don't think...
Wow, that's conspiratorial. That's pretty...
No, it's not conspiratorial at all. The people from Washington are in charge. The lines of power, the authority is with the people in Washington. The people in the Winnemucca office, no, they don't want to shut down. They might want to squeeze it. That's one possibility. They may be playing a very, very high-stakes game of chicken. I would love the org to play chicken with the BLM and say, yeah, fine, we cancel it. Now that's going to be pain for the org, because the org has now evolved into this monster with, tens of full-time, full-time employees, and all of those people would more or less have to be laid off. I mean, it would have to go down to a skeleton crew for a year or two. But think of what would happen. First of all, the BLM would scream bloody murder, and they would, that Burning Man thing. What do you need from us to get that going again?
Right. So
but let me finish. And then the second thing that might happen is it will focus the minds of the people within Burning Man into what's important here. Is it important that it be this monstrous cultural event with, Larry was talking about 100,000 people back in 2005, and everyone thought he was crazy. Now we're at the doorstep of 100,000 people.
Do you really want Burning Man to be 100,000 people, though? That's the thing. It's hard to slow the train down.
Right. Well, my opinion is not relevant at this moment. If Burning Man got shut down, it would focus the minds of the people who run Burning Man on thinking, what do we want here? Do we want it to be this monster with, celebrities flying in and these incredibly fancy camps and incredibly well-funded art? or do we want it to be a much smaller event that doesn't have celebrities flying in?
I don't know if Burning Man's ever going to be able to be brought back to.
Well, that's what a shutdown might do. I mean, that's what I'm saying. Burning Man
could increase the scarcity of the event. Scarcity equals value, and I think that if they did shut down, it would be when they brought it back, unless they limited the number of tickets dramatically, it would be even more popular.
But they might make the decision after a year off to say, okay, we really are going to have only 50,000 people, and we really are just going to have a lottery for the tickets.
Sure.
Like what they should have done for years.
Well, what do you mean by lottery? Because
right now the system is so dang broken. It's just so amazingly broken. It's supposed to be first come, first served. By definition, it's supposed to be who can hit that enter the room button faster, which is kind of a crazy idea in the first place. But that's the way it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be first come, first served. Well, there's so much malfunction in the ticket distribution system that it ends up being a lottery anyway. It ends up being lucky. But the people who are running the bot farms have a natural advantage. So it's the worst sort of lottery ever. It's a lottery where people who run bot farms have an inherent advantage. And that's not what Burning Man intended, but that's what we've got.
I think could really fix a lot of those problems is the ability to have a marketplace, right? So another group of event holders that I'm familiar with, they have a marketplace where you buy your ticket and then you can sell that ticket, but only through the marketplace.
Right. And that's part of the system too, that people have been screaming for Burning Man to implement for a long time anyway.
It's such a simple solution to such a big problem.
Well, the other solution is if you're find you're not using a ticket, you can only sell it back to the org. That's another crazy. Yeah, that's a huge limit.
I don't know if that's the solution, but having like the Apple Store, right? Like the Apple iStore for iPhones, right? It puts certain controls on an economy, and you can't have the Wild West. Wild West capitalism for Burning Man tickets because it results in people taking advantage. And
it would mean that all the tickets would land in the hands of the wealthy.
Exactly.
All right.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Well, anyway, but to finish what I'm saying, if Burning Man was canceled for a year, I think it would be very interesting to see what the organizers of Burning Man would choose to do when it resuscitated. It might go back to being 80,000 people. They might say, know what? We're just going to make it 40,000 and we're going to do a lottery. So a lot of old timers can come. Some old timers can't come. And that's it. We can't run this thing so big anymore.
See, I don't think that even if they did put a cap at 40,000, I think that the problem is mostly that the cat is out of the bag. There's interest among such a wide range of people. Burning Man is like the de facto cool cultural expression that's happening right now, that you're going to have this competition for tickets, and it's never going to be an underground event anymore. It can't be an underground event anymore. It's blown up. It's not, and it's also not the crest of the wave anymore.
I agree.
There are other things that are like...
No, I agree. I think that the population will be limited, not because fewer people will want to go, but because Burning Man will make a different ticket system.
Ure.
And there'll be a lot of folks who want to go and can't go, and that's the problem. But the thing is, you may have heard this, a lot of the main reason, if I'm not mistaken, the main reason that the BLM has been limiting the population of Burning Man to the extent that it has is because of Highway 447. It's come down to the goddamn highway. Sure. The highway, a 2-lane highway, simply can't handle the influx or the outflux.
Yeah, so it's kind of a shit show.
It's a total shit show. The thing is, we're running up against these crazy natural barriers, which is one of the reasons why Burning Man has been, fine with having people set up airline service.
It's like a microcosm for humankind.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And so we'll see what happens. We know Burning Man is happening this year because all this controversy doesn't affect the permit this year. But it probably, but it almost certainly affects it next year. It might not even affect it next year. The context of this hoo-ha with these outrageous conditions demanded by the BLM is all for a 10-year permit. Burning Man was trying to get a 10-year permit so they don't have to go through this permitting, uncertainty every year.
Sure.
And the BLM said, oh, you want a 10-year permit? Here are your conditions.
Right.
So this doesn't apply to this year, and it may not even apply to next year.
Well,
I mean, we'll see.
I think Burning Man is definitely an amazing canvas, to get back to the
absolutely.
art.
It is blessed that way. This is, and I got my jolt of enthusiasm about it back in 1998. I left Burning Man in 1998 with at least 4 projects in my mind, all of which I was going to build. I can't even remember now, but they were
projects that came
no.
being.
I didn't do a single one. But the point is, I was inspired to do a project.
Sure.
I was inspired to do 4 projects, and it doesn't really matter whether you do them or not. The point is that you get this incredible jolt of enthusiasm and empowerment from having it be, and I'm going to use your word because I use it too, a canvas.
Yeah.
You have this endless blank canvas that you can put something on. You have an audience of, at that time, 15,000 people, and then later on, I got into the honorarium system where that they give me money. I can get money for building my project, and so
your first piece was Mesmer. Was that one of your first big LED pieces?
My first piece was called Spin.
Okay, it seems like most of the pieces that I've seen of yours online have been like kinetic. Persistence of vision pieces where you have LEDs that are spinning, creating a...
That's recent. It's funny. That's the beginning, and it's also recent. Mm-hmm. My first piece was, in fact, a POV piece. It was called Spin, and this was in the year 2000, and that was my 12-foot tall piece. It was a vertical shaft with 6-foot arms sticking out to the side, 4 arms, and it spun around on this vertical axis, and at the end of each arm was a column of LED clusters from the LED sign industry. Back in the days when LED signs were made, you would get these 2-inch by 2-inch huge plastic things, each one having like 45 LEDs in them, third of them red, third of them green, third of them blue, and that was a pixel. That was one pixel, and I was
so just large, huge pixels.
Right. So each arm had a vertical column of 16 pixels, and so this thing formed a cylindrical digital display, 16 pixels tall, and 360 pixels around, mm-hmm. and it had 4 arms that swept through the space, creating the POV effect, and it was surprisingly effective. I mean, given the fact that it was 16 pixels tall, given the fact that it was a gorgeous 3-bit color, literally red, green, blue, white, black, cyan, magenta, yellow. That's it.
No gradation.
No gradations at all.
Wow.
And it worked real. And it was using the wrong technology. It was using these LEDs from the sign industry. It was using a what was it? It was a funny box that you could buy back then that connected to Wi-Fi and had a serial port on it. And the purpose of this, so that if you had a Wi-Fi network in your office and you had a serial printer, you could plug the printer into this box and then access that printer via the Wi-Fi network. Believe it or not. And
so it was a print server.
Yeah, well, it was a Wi-Fi to serial converter.
Yeah.
And I had it going into some hardware created by a company in Rancho Cordova called LED Effects. I don't know if you've ever heard of them.
No.
A guy named Kevin Furry, and he, his company provided the kind of the hardware to do the LEDs, and then I had an IBM PC laptop transmitting Wi-Fi packets to this box I just described, and then those packets would go out to the LED Effects hardware, and that's how it worked.
So you wrote your own software to drive it?
Oh yeah, of course I did. I always write my own software.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's you're a programmer, and that's
mm-hmm.
the angle that you come at this industry from is from the programming.
Yeah, and all of my projects, with some exceptions, come from a point of view of, hey, I wonder if I could do that. And
it's
also
a technical challenge.
Exactly. And of course the technical challenges are way more interesting if there's ones that no one's ever done before.
Of course.
So for example, Firmament began as a technical challenge, which was a couple of technical challenges. One, it was going to be a suspended canopy that would be interlaced with motion or proximity detectors, and so the moment someone walked into it, some picture would be displayed above that person's head representing that person, an avatar, if you will. And as that person walked around underneath the canopy, the avatar would follow them around.
And you were going to do that with proximity sensors?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. You know, with IR detectors, whatever. You know, I wasn't quite sure of the technology. That was the original idea, and it wasn't called Firmament. It was, I didn't even have a good name for it. And then, like, you know, if two people walked around and then they kind of came together, their avatars would meet, and then some explosion would happen or some other kind of fun animation would happen. But it was very, very much a technical show-offy thing. And then the other technical challenge was to make it on a triangular grid, because I knew I was going to be doing these LEDs at very, very low resolution. The LED spacing on Firmament is 3 inches. And I had this intuitive idea that if you did a grid of LEDs that was a triangular rather than rectangular, it would do better with organic shapes.
Well, it does. And I mean, I think that's part of the beauty of Firmament, is that it is such an organic shape. That's why people love it so much. It looks
thank
like,
you.
Well, I mean, it looks like a leaf or something, you know, and people lay underneath it, and it's kind of the de facto chill trip out space. That's how I was introduced to it.
Well, thank you so much.
Absolutely.
So there were 2 technical challenges. One, the triangular grid, which I did do, and then the other one was this, motion sensor thing, and it was totally interactive, right? Because Burning Man always says, "Oh, all art should be interactive." How you fill out an honorarium thing? How is your piece interactive? It's not like, is your piece interactive? It's how is it? Tell me how you're going to make your piece interactive.
Well, first people take psychedelics, then they lay down underneath it.
That's more or less what I write for Firmament these days. I write, people form community and blah, 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 blah. And it's true. They do, but it's not interactive in the classic sense.
Well, I didn't realize that it was interactive. I thought it was like a display piece.
It isn't. It's not interactive.
Yeah.
It was going to be interactive like what I just described to you. And then I started researching the motion sensor technology. So there's ultrasonic. So there's IR.
I was going to say, we've done a lot with that, and that's
hard.
why I was so surprised that you use proximity, because it's hard to find the right technology.
Right, it's hard
to do position tracking underneath a piece.
I know. Well, so guess what? I started getting scared. I started saying, "Oh my God, how is this going to work? How many hundreds of IR sensors do I need to have up there in order to make this work at all?" And the number started seeming kind of scary. I think I came up with 900 at one point. And then
processing all that data.
Yeah, processing all that data. I mean, it started getting kind of prohibitive. And then I went for a hike with my dear father, who is a landscape architect. And I hadn't been on a hike with him in a while. It was kind of fun. I grew up in Marin, so we went there, in his house. We went hiking on Mount Tim. And I described to him this project I did that I had in mind. And he said, I think you've got something different. I think what you really have here is something totally different than what your intention is. I think that what you are creating here is this gorgeous kind of space where you can project images of the sun, the moon, the stars, the aurora borealis, those Hubble photographs, the entire firmament.
And he came up with that name.
Exactly.
So is he an artist as well? Is your father
He's a
an
landscape architect. Cool. In other words, he is a master of organizing space for people to live in.
There's art in everything, man.
Absolutely. Well, architecture is by definition an art. But the point is that he's always had this amazing eye for kind of, he would come into my apartment in San Francisco and rearrange my furniture. And I'd say, "What the heck are you doing?" And I'd look at it and I go, "Oh, yeah, cool."
Is he like a practitioner of Feng Shui? Does he?
No, he's totally intuitive.
Yeah.
He's very intuitive, and he's right, almost all the time. Well, anyway, so he totally changed my mind. I completely changed focus, outwent all the interactivity, and basically it just became a space to project these images. Definitely, focusing on the kind of the Hubble issue, the photographs, the space photographs, as well as the abstract images, and then then I said, okay, we should do some music. Okay. And my initial idea was doing down-tempo music, which I'm very, very fond of. And then it's like, yeah, maybe classical would work too. So believe it or not, the first night that Firmament ran, it played down-tempo all night.
I actually like that. I like that paradigm.
I like it too. But the second
Classical
night,
fits too.
But the second night, I played the classical music, and hoo boy, I could just tell. I could just tell the moment people started showing up that everyone was like, whoa.
Well, it's a novelty,
right,
especially on Playa. You know, that's what I was encouraging our camp last year, to have a classical music night during Burn. I was like, guys, that is the classiest thing we could ever do.
Well, I'm quite proud that, after I did the classical music thing in 2015, 2016 was full of classical music stuff.
Was it? I didn't notice that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there was lots of, that was, I'm not saying that's the beginning of the Playa orchestras, but they definitely became a lot more visible in 2016. There's a camp called the Phage, which is like, kind of, I've always perceived the Phage as being the cutting edge, really young people, really musically adventurous people who like just the most gnarly dubstep imaginable. In 2016, the Phage had a classical music night.
That's awesome.
Yeah, right. And I didn't write the classical music, of course, but I will take a little bit of a bow for getting that idea out
I think
there.
2016, I camped next to a death metal camp. It was ridiculous.
To go to the other extreme. But anyway, so that was the evolution of Firmament. It began as this technical challenge and kind of show-offy technical challenge piece, and then it ended up being this all right, we're just going to display beautiful images, and then music got added to it, and then it ended up being a goddamn community. I mean, it ended up being this incredible meeting space. I could not believe the numbers of people who would hang there all night. I'm sure you've all heard the nicknames like Tripper Trap and Hippie Trap. Some people call it the mustache because the first 2 years it kind of had a little bit of a mustache profile. But the funniest name that I heard in 2015 was Permanent, which meant you couldn't get your friends to leave.
That's
that they were
hilarious.
permanently knocked down on their back.
Sure.
And that I was very proud of that. I thought that was pretty funny. So a technical challenge led to a visual thing, to an audio thing, to a social thing.
So do you think that's what you're best known for?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. The social. I think I'm best known for creating these spaces. And I did that at Firmament. I did that at Burning Man for Firmament for 3 years. And then I did Paraluna, and that was last year.
Remind me, Paraluna was...
Is the spinning disc.
Okay,
that's
right.
the big 28-foot diameter disc. Now, I say spinning, even though most people haven't seen it spin. The reason it didn't spin much in 2018 is because some jackass climbed the boom lift and tried to hang from these very, very, very lightweight spokes and broke 9 of them.
Right.
And so I was able to lash those spokes back up to the boom lift, but because it was lashed, I couldn't spin it anymore.
Well, so I thought the whole point of the piece was it was a persistence of vision piece.
Yeah, it is. But the thing is that it wasn't spinning. So it didn't really get the benefit of the persistence of vision, but lo and behold, people loved it anyway.
Of course.
And basically, in a way, it still was a persistence of vision piece, but just as persistence of vision involves motion, the motion was not the spinning of the piece because it wouldn't spin anymore. The motion was the content. As long as I created content that moved, as long as I had a photograph that moved with sufficient velocity across all those LEDs, which in some cases were spaced by 2 feet apart from each other, it worked. So really, that jackass who climbed the tower, I owe him a little bit of thanks because it taught me just how much people can perceive your image even if the spacing is incredibly wide.
I mean, nothing ever goes like you plan, and that's the
Right,
thing.
well, that was a pretty dramatic shock. I mean, I've never wanted to go home as bad as I wanted to for about 30 hours after that.
Sure.
I was just in misery.
Yeah.
And then after 30 hours, I kind of started thinking, you know what? Actually, people are enjoying it. They don't even know it's supposed to spin. spin. Okay, fine. Now I'm making a piece right now called Parastella. What is Parastella? Well, it's simply Paraluna, but it doesn't spin, which is tons easier to make.
So you're over the idea. You're not gonna try and revisit that next year.
Oh no. I'm still doing spinning pieces. Absolutely, spinning is still better than non-spinning. But I'm doing this piece for an upcoming an interactive arts, not interactive, but immersive art space in New York City called Zero Space, and I'm loaning them a piece for a year. Well, it's Parastella. If I tried to do Paraluna for a year, I'd be in for a little bit of almost certainly some difficulty, because anytime something's electromechanical and it's moving,
oh my god, yeah,
it's
you'd be in there like every
right.
month you'd be repairing it.
So I'm making them a piece which is essentially the equivalent of what Paraluna ended up being last year, and because of that jackass who climbed my tower, I know it will work.
Right.
So it's funny how things work out. So let me give you one more deal. Like the thing. And I don't take credit for this. This is just kind of the magic of all these things that I've fallen into. I made Paraluna last year, and it had the classical music. It didn't do what I do, that I didn't spin like I intended, and yet it was so powerful that people were even more moved than they were under Firmament, and that kind of really surprised me. I even ran into, on Facebook, a woman who got a tattoo of Paraluna put on her arm because she was so moved by it. Do you remember how last year there was this piece that was a moon attached to a bicycle?
I thought that was so good.
I met that young woman. She called herself Luna, and she was from Mumbai. And I think that was actually the most brilliant piece on the whole Playa last year.
It was one of my favorites.
And I asked her to come by and say hello when she came, and she did. And I played Éclat de la Lune by Debussy, and while she was there, and this woman with a tattoo on her arm, she has a photograph of Paraluna with the moon behind it.
That's cool.
And that's what's on her arm.
I love the artist collaborations that happen kind of spontaneously. We did like a Sonic Runway thing. I love those guys. Those guys are super cool. We even did a thing with the 747, which was cool. Like, I like those guys as people. I think they're cool, interesting people. I think that their installation, it's whatever. I wasn't blown away by the light art on their installation, and whatever you might think of the concept, they were nice, genuinely cool people that were easy to talk to, fun to be around. Same thing with Lion Warrior. I thought those guys were amazing.
Yeah.
We had a collaboration with them. We did a thing with 747, did a thing with Sonic Runway. I'm very interested in meeting the people that create the art. You know what I mean? I think that's like one of my favorite parts of Burning Man is just getting to know, what people's artistic intentions are.
Absolutely. And, we both know just kind of how this kind of community of light art is kind of taking off. LEDs are awesome is like probably the worst name for a Facebook group ever, but it's a great group,
So there's another group.
And it's all caps to boot, right?
There's a group called Ooh Shiny, right? I don't know if you're on this group or not. It's an email list, but it is, I swear to God, man, it is the highest density of heavy-hitting new media artists that I've ever come across. People from Chicago, New York, all the major new media firms have people who are represented on this group, and it's great because all it is conversations about technical new media questions. We meet up every once in a while. There's probably 1,000, 1,500 people on the list, and it's an email list.
Cool.
But it's great. And every time somebody posts something interesting, I'll look at their portfolio, like find out what company they're from, or look at the domain attached to their email, and just stalk them for a second. And I've met some cool people through that list.
Neat.
Same thing with LEDs are awesome. It's all interesting people.
Yeah. Well, I love that community. I love the Burning Man artist community. I've been pretty deeply involved with the Burning Man artist community since at least 2002. The whole kind of like in Berkeley down here, Murray Street, which used to be where the Crucible was, and Michael Christian's studio still is. And then across the street, you have Jim Mason's stuff, which used to be the Shipyard. Now it's all Power Labs. The community there was without peer, and I've always loved being part of that.
Yeah. Are you still part of, would you consider yourself part of Burning Man communities?
Of course.
You do like kind of your own thing though, you know?
Well, I'm part of something called the Rhythm Society, which has got a whole lot of people that go to Burning Man. They don't
That's
stay.
Right. That's how I met you.
They don't stay in the same community at all. I mean, I'm sorry, they don't stay in the same camp at all. But they, you know, but we still kind of know each other. I'm kind of the paterfamilias of my own little camp, which is just kind of focused on whatever art I'm doing that year.
Yeah.
I have an absolutely superb group of people. I could not be any luckier to have the people that I have. And
how big is the camp?
25 people.
Yeah, that's a great size.
Yeah, it's a totally awesome size.
We had 60 people at the camp that I camped with last year, and that felt good. And I've camped with big camps.
Yeah.
I've camped with tiny camps. I'd much rather camp with a camp of 20 to 50 people.
Right. Yeah. If you camp in a camp of 25 grown-ups, that's the best.
Yeah.
Yeah, because stuff gets cleaned without anyone screaming, "Hey, clean up your stuff."
Grown-ups being people who have been to Burning Man or at least get the ethos.
Well, it's even simpler than that. People who just have the ethos that you used a piece of silverware, you wash it.
Sure.
Those little tiny details make a big difference in your Burning Man experience. As you know, I'm sure. So I mean, I guess to me, the Burning Man community that I camp with is not, much as I love them, is not as interesting as kind of the artist community. I'm definitely connected with the kind of the honorarium artists, the people who, apply for and get honorarium. There's actually a secret list for the honorarium artists that people who work at Burning Man aren't allowed to be part of. And, I'm part of those. And they're like LEDs are awesome. You can just ask questions and you can say, what does everybody think of this?
Now, is that the group that gets grants?
Well, it's not. Look, it's a loose group of people.
Yeah.
The people who get grants are the people who apply for honorariums and the org chooses.
Well, that's what I mean. Is that equivalent? Is like an honorarium?
That's what I mean by honorarium. Yes.
Okay.
But it's a loose group. I mean, it was formed a few years ago because a lot of us who have been getting honorariums for years weren't happy about the terms of the contract and some other things, and so we formed this private group so that we could discuss it without our showing our hand to the org.
So I've never even applied for a grant from Burning Man. Honestly, I found it much more practical. I always work in a group, first of all, so I'm always part of I've never gone in as like my own artist or been, in charge of my own piece. But I also find that the grants that I see given out are too small to really fund some of the bigger ideas that are out there.
Right.
Do you get grants from Burning Man? Or you?
Yeah. I've gotten grants.
Do you still self-fund?
No.
And so a Burning Man grant pays for your entire thing?
Yeah.
Wow.
Within a few $1,000s, sure.
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, I don't think I've ever had a surplus, but I've never run a serious deficit either.
Oh, that's great.
So for example, I ran a deficit the year I did Firmament of maybe $7,000. Well, that's because I bought a whole bunch of generators.
Sure.
So I had to buy generators in order to run Firmament. Is that really a Firmament expense? No, it's just that I had to buy a bunch of infrastructure which I use for other things. Mm-hmm. So basically, I've always come out pretty well on the honorarium thing. A lot of artists run into serious deficit land, and they end up having to do the GoFundMes or whatever else.
Yeah, I have no idea how much it costs to make a piece that's like standalone.
Right.
But I know like the big camps or the art cars. I don't know how you would make an art car for the amount
all right. So here's the paradigm that you're in, if I'm not mistaken, is that you get a fairly sizable budget and then you hire people, right?
No, I think that the project, we always work ourselves, but it's the group of artists that I collaborate with. Sometimes they hire like assistants, but it's basically us who are doing the fabrication and the install.
Right, but you get paid.
Yes.
Right. Well, the honorarium system is not meant for people to get paid.
No, I understand that.
Right. The honorarium system is designed so that you, the artist, get your expenses paid. But you, as far as you don't get a salary, you don't get an hourly, and anyone who helps you is volunteering, and that's why they give out along with the money they oftentimes give out a nice big handful of free tickets.
Yeah.
So that then the people who are helping you get in return for their help a free ticket, and that usually makes everybody happy. Although I've learned through the years that people are not just doing it for the tickets. They really enjoy being part of a project.
Of course, I mean that's the best part of Burning Man.
If a lot of people, but that's not prima facie, evident to most people.
I think that to people who have been going for a number of years, and actually a lot of first-timers, depends on the personality, but I think that that's kind of de facto a big draw to a lot of people for Burning Man, is being part of a project or expressing yourself artistically, or just being part of something.
Right. And that's why I have such a lovely crew, is that they all want to be part of something, and I give them something to be part of, and I need their help and they need my thing. And so it all works out.
Yeah.
It all works out really, really well.
So
and I constantly encourage everyone in my crew to make something themselves.
Now you're taking your art and you're renting it out. You're getting commissions from other cities, city arts festivals, other institutions like museums, or
yeah, I'm getting there. I have my business as a rental artist is pretty well developed. I get calls from a lot of festivals and a lot of events and some private parties, and I make good money. That's the lion's share of my income, because this is my only job. It comes from that. I've started getting commissions. I want to get many more of them, but that's just kind of getting rolling right now.
Well, that's the paradox, right? Is how do you take your art form as an artist and turn that into a career where you can make a living? And it sounds to me like
I've done it.
Well, it sounds like you've had a career pre-art producer.
Put it this way, I had a lot of runway. I earned enough money as a programmer to, buy my warehouse that I live in,
sure,
and build my house. So I don't have the torturous need that so many of my friends have, which is to somehow afford a house in the Bay Area.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I know.
I've pretty much given up on the idea of owning land, at least until there's a crazy earthquake and everything crashes. Buy up the rubble.
Oh, believe me, when the 2008 downturn was really good news in my view, because all of a sudden houses in my neighborhood, here in West Oakland, were affordable again.
And
now they're not.
Is that when you bought
I bought my warehouse in 2003, so I did not get a great big bargain on that at all.
Yeah.
But I did all right. I did all right. And what's important is that I can make a modest income and call myself successful. I don't need to earn, $200,000 a year.
Well, I don't think anybody's making a killing doing light art or new media art. I think there's a handful of people who are making it work. I think there's a number of companies that are doing really well for themselves, but I don't see anybody getting rich creating new media art. And that's okay. I think that
there are some big names who,
it's not what it's really about. I think everybody I know that's doing this is trying to push the envelope.
Right.
If you imagine human knowledge as a bubble, we're on one little section of that bubble trying to push that bubble out.
Oh yeah, that is my main motivation. Is I'm trying to, it happens again and again. I found myself looking at myself going, oh look, you did it again. You're just simply trying to do something that no one else has done.
Well, the cool part is that all of the new media artists in my circle that I know are doing that in different sections of that bubble. We don't really compete because, me and you, for example, we're both light artists. We're both working in the same medium with LEDs. We're pushing the bubble in two different places. I'm very much into mapping. I'm into sculptural mapping. It seems like you're very into contextual POV-based installations, kinetics. it expresses itself in different ways.
So
we have two different sets of clients.
Just out of curiosity, when you say mapping, do you mean mapping with video projectors or mapping with LEDs?
No, volumetric pixel mapping. So doing things where you have a volume of pixels in real space and you're mapping content across that in a 3D environment. So like
I've never seen you do a volumetric LED display.
Well, Sanctuary was volumetric.
It was?
Yep. ICM in Los Angeles was volumetric. That was just like a big hanging pixel cube, basically. Big chandelier.
Okay. Yeah, I saw a picture of you hanging from with climbing gear on that one, I believe.
Yeah, totally. I mean, yes.
I didn't know that the Sanctuary had a volumetric aspect to it. All I saw was the lights on the surface.
Yeah, well, there were many layers, and it was volumetric in that there were slices in Z-space. Mm-hmm. So, for example, with Madrix, the tool that we use for that project, you can do volumetric content by mapping on a two-dimensional array, right? So you have like your two-dimensional array of LEDs, and then you can create slices in the Z dimension. So you can create depth.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, so then you have a volume of pixels where you can run generative three-dimensional content. Now, for the next project we're doing, we're switching away from Madrix because of limitations with that software, and we're switching to a program that's much more akin to a game engine. It's a real-time generative software called Smode, which is a piece of French software. You can think of it like a real-time 3D Studio Max with the ability to output to pixels, right? Or it was written for projection, but we've been working with the developers to get them to implement pixel control, so individual pixel control. So this piece that we're working on has 30 to 60,000 pixels across a number of sculptural elements of the architecture, and those pixels will be mapped in 3D, and then we'll generate content based on particle effects in that three-dimensional environment that manifests out into that array of pixels. The content that we do is very non-contextual. Like we never it's all architectural. So it's based on, I think of it as like flowing waves of energy, or flowing waves of light, or it's that paradigm versus the video content paradigm. And this is just a great environment to do that in. Smode.
I've seen that word.
Smode, or
I've seen Smode. Yeah. I've seen that. Yeah.
Well, it'll be really cool to show you. I think it's fascinating how different people attack the idea of mapping content onto pixels, because pixels and projection are fundamentally two different. They're two different paradigms to wrap your head around. Projection is a very two-dimensional thing. It's like a wrapper. It's like a canvas that you can wrap onto things, and that's how projection mapping works. Whereas pixels are points in space where content flows through those pixels. And you can arrange those.
If you would do it that way. I mean, you can also arrange your LEDs to do various surfaces.
Yep. Absolutely.
And just as projection mapping can go into three dimensions when you have like a Gothic cathedral.
Yeah.
Then you can also have 2D in LED. So I guess I don't see a bright line qualitatively between projection mapping and LEDs. It's just a different way of getting the light there.
It is, and it's a different way of thinking about it. But traditionally, almost all of the content creation packages that are available for mapping are geared towards projection, which is great. That's the world I came from. I used to do concert touring, and that was my job, was to do the projection mapping systems and manage those computer systems. But it's very frustrating at the same time how, up until very recently, the only system that you could do real pixel mapping with was Madrix. I mean, you can do it with other packages, but not volumetrically, not like a true three-dimensional environment. And all of the new media servers that are coming out right now, D3 is not a new media server, but it's definitely the most prominent. D3 is what they use on all the big concert touring shows. And that is a prime example of a 3D environment used to projection map. It doesn't support pixel mapping, not individual pixel mapping. Correct me if I'm wrong. I might be wrong about that, but from what I understand, D3 is not an ideal platform to do pixel mapping with.
Right. Yeah, there's also the software package that Mark Slee put out, in open source.
So the
one that's used by Symmetry Labs a lot.
I just met with him. Actually, so Symmetry Labs doesn't use his package anymore, but they started with his software. And it's interesting because it's based in processing, and it's a Java application, which I thought was a really interesting choice in development environments to do it.
I mean, yeah. Processors have gotten so fast that you can write things in Java and have it work.
Yeah, and it's such a small amount of data you're outputting because he's doing pixel mapping. It's not a huge number of pixels. He's a very cool guy. He's a very interesting character. I definitely want to have him on this podcast at some point and just jam with him and talk about what he's doing because it's very unique. But Symmetry Labs, man. It's crazy times for them, crazy times for Obscura. It's the industry is changing.
I think you know things that I don't. Why is it crazy times for anybody?
I don't even know exact. I don't want to get into it with Symmetry Labs because there's a lot of kind of like personal drama happening around Alex that I don't really know about firsthand. I've just heard, and I don't feel comfortable diving in there. But I know that the company is going through big changes. I know that there's a lot of people who are kind of ejecting from that group and going in different directions. And the same thing with Obscura, which just leaves this environment that I think digital ambience is much more a part of that environment than your group. You seem to be much more focused on the software end of things, developing your software platform, LED Labs. And
I wish it was more about. I wish it was more about art, the software. It is about art pieces. It's about making a living as an artist, really.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what I spend most of my time doing, is negotiating contracts.
Well, what I mean is Symmetry Labs, right?
Yeah.
Obscura, Digital Ambience are I would consider DA a design firm. Right, it's like a group of people. There's no one. I actually find it more comfortable to not be like Rob Pope, the artist. I find it much more comfortable to promote our work if I'm promoting the we. It's like, Digital Ambience did that. It wasn't Rob Pope, it was Digital Ambience, which is true. It's like there's a whole bunch of artists involved in this group, and I find it more comfortable. Chris Schardt seems like an artist.
That is what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, exactly.
That is what I'm trying to do.
There's a lot of people. There are many people who. That seems like it's a differentiator. It's a division between, if you're an individual artist, you kind of go in the fine art direction. Right, that's like a path that opens up naturally. If you're a firm, then you have to play a different game or a slightly different game. Well, you
have a payroll. You need to go after the well-paying gigs.
We also, I find that most of the new media design firms that I know of, they go after marketing gigs. Or for us, we're very focused on architecture. We go after architectural gigs. Whereas if you're an artist, if you're like an individual artist, then you can go after commissions. You can go after, city arts projects are much more likely to hire an individual artist than a firm. Oh yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I've had that's been a tough nut for me to crack.
It is for everybody.
I've been applying to those RFQs and RFPs now for about a year and a half, and I made it into the finals for one of them. Right, it's and I haven't gotten a single one. And basically, what I've talked with people on both ends of that. I've talked with people in the public entities that submit those things, and it's unfortunately it's chicken and the egg. They want an artist who's already done it. they want an artist who's already handled the budget that they're talking about, has already done a similar project, and it's like, gee, you're going to be eating your tail if you don't give new artists a chance.
Well, that's
but nobody wants to give the artist who's never done it a chance.
I think that's true among corporate gigs and art commission gigs. I think that's just in general. If somebody's going to give you a huge chunk of money, they want to see something on your portfolio that says, yeah, I've dealt with a similarly sized chunk of money.
I am finding that the corporate world is much more willing to trust me simply on the strength of my pieces. Whereas when I do RFQs and RFPs, it seems like they're interested in me having done a project no matter how it looked.
Yeah.
You know, as long as I did that project successfully before, then they're fine with it. And that's discouraging.
Well, there's definitely a different set of motivations for both those two groups. If you look at the motivations, and if you also look at the structure, an art commission is that. It's a commission, and there's many people on it, and those people tend to be fine artists, so they're looking for the personality, right? They're looking for a personality. They don't want like a firm, because that breaks the paradigm.
The first RFP that I did was this big steel ball up in Bellingham, Washington. It used to store acid, 30-foot diameter steel ball, and they were submitting proposals to do something with it. I, of course, submitted something with LEDs. The company that got it was a design firm. I mean, it seems to me that they look. If I was a city, or if I was a corporation, I might feel comfort knowing that there was not just one person. Sorry.
Oh, it's okay.
I would feel comfort knowing that there was not just one person handling this, but there was a whole team in case that one person got sick.
Yeah,
right?
Of course.
So I can see, I can see why these entities only want to hire somebody who's done it before. I can see why they might want a team rather than an individual. I, just because of the way I work, am an individual.
Yeah.
And I don't have that experience yet, so I'm working on it. I'm not pessimistic.
Maybe it's just the cities that we've been dealing with the San Francisco Arts Commission.
Oh no, I've been dealing with them all across the country. And for example, like 4 of them in Charlotte in the last 4 years.
Oh wow.
And I even have contacts in that organization within Charlotte, and and they're like, yeah, you don't have their experience, so that's why we didn't pick you. Sorry.
You don't have the experience?
I don't have the experience. I don't have the experience handling a $150,000 civic contract. I don't have experience working with the city government. I mean, they even say it in the RFQs. They want to see in your resume, they want to see evidence that you simply have gone through the motions of creating a piece in this kind of context, no matter what it ended up looking like, right? In other words, it doesn't matter what it really looks like. Look, I'm sure the people who grant these things care what it looks like, but an awful lot of the requirements they're putting out there are going to exclude an awful lot of people who are brilliant artists and have a lot poorer resume than me. I have a decent resume now, but I still can't get someone to take a chance on me doing a civic project.
Well, I can tell you that we've done a couple civic art projects now, and it's a red tape nightmare. I mean, that is you can understand why, because they're inside that machine. They see it. They're like, oh man, like when we give you this money, you're almost just as likely to fail.
You better be ready for this.
Well, you're just as likely to fail by tripping over the red tape than you are to fail by tripping over technical details of your project.
Right.
And I think that they see that. They've probably seen that a lot, and it's probably their heads on the line if they bring an artist in who can't handle the amount of bullshit that you have to deal with. Right.
Well, maybe I should just be grateful for what I have.
No, you should keep going after them, because I think you're much more likely than we are to make serious inroads in that. Look at who's the guy who did the Bay Bridge?
Leo Villarreal.
Yeah, look at him, man. He's all over the place. He is crushing it, as he should be, and he is a individual fine artist. Mm-hmm. Just because you're an individual doesn't mean you can't have a team behind you. It just means that instead of being brand, right? Instead of being like some abstract entity. Like for us, it's digital ambience, right? But for you, it's Christopher. And just like for Leo, he is the brand. And that seems to resonate, in my mind, that seems to resonate more with the arts commissions, because I think that they're used to dealing with artists as brands in and of themselves.
Right. There was an RFQ for a couple of years ago probably a year and a half ago, for Treasure Island. There's lots of development going on Treasure Island, and there's going to be this park on the top of the hill, and there's going to be some stuff down on the harbor, and there's going to be some other stuff. And they went out of their way in the RFQ to mention that they, that they wanted to try and give unknown artists a shot, and they really wanted local artists, and they chose international artists that not a single one lived here. Yeah, and it's just like, what?
Well, that's why. So we applied for the MUTEC Festival. When MUTEC came to San Francisco. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, we were applying for the piece that we submitted wasn't actually well suited. Now that I've seen MUTEC in San Francisco once, the piece that we submitted wouldn't have fit very well anyway. But they didn't choose any San Francisco artists really. They brought everybody in. It's a lot of Germans, a lot of people from the UK, people from Chicago, New York. Mm-hmm. Not a lot of people from San Francisco, and maybe that's because the San Francisco scene is lacking. But
right. Well, one idea I've had for a long time is that the lights on the Bay Bridge is perhaps to be thought of as a medium rather than a finished piece.
Yeah, but the thing is that content is so iconic now at this point.
Well, no, but that would, I would think that the general public would really enjoy having it get shaken up. And for 1 month, have, Joe the artist do it. And then the next month, Becky the artist, and have it cycle through a whole bunch of new tech artists.
Yeah.
I think that would be a great thing. And the bridge, though, the idea of putting the lights on the bridge is definitely Ben Davis and Leo Villarreal have credit for that. They didn't build the bridge. The bridge is a public entity. The bridge is a public facility. It makes sense that perhaps that should go and be distributed around the public a bit.
Yeah, I mean, I can totally see that point of view. I can also see the point of view that it is an integrated art piece made with a purpose and a look in mind. Now, I think that it would be very cool to allow people to create content for the bridge, but I think that in the end, it's like an aesthetic choice. It's an artistic choice. So I don't know. Yeah, I don't know even who you would approach to float that idea.
Well, as far as
probably Ben Davis, actually.
Well, as my understanding is, it's now publicly owned.
Well, Ben Davis refinanced it and was able to raise the money to make it a semi-permanent piece. Mm-hmm. Semi-permanent being like he got 10 years worth of funding, something like that.
Right, but I think that I think that funding was required by Caltrans to keep it up. They wanted there to be a fund for the ongoing maintenance, and that's what he funded. That's what Ben Davis funded. I think that Caltrans now owns it.
Interesting.
So, but I don't know that for a fact. I think that's the case. I think that I remember reading along the word donate in the context of that, which was, no, we want to give it to the city or give it to Caltrans or whoever's in charge and have it be an ongoing thing.
Man, we're going to have to look that up.
Yeah.
I can see people getting real pissed about this conversation.
Yeah, I mean, but it's like, it's been years now. It's been a totally Leo Villarreal piece. And as I said, Leo and Ben Davis, they deserve a lot of credit for laying over the barbed wire. Imagine all the regulatory hurdles they went through. Oh my God! I can imagine all the boring meetings they had to go to. I totally understand that, but it's been a lot of years now. I think it'd be pretty neat to spread it around, not to the benefit of me and other artists, but to the benefit of the Bay Area. To put some variety out there.
I've definitely seen some visual art that I would not appreciate have strobing through my bedroom windows if I lived in the city.
Yeah. So, don't put that there. I mean, you can curate it.
You'd have to.
You can curate it.
You'd have to.
You can make it really super duper clear that, hey, this is the mood we're going for, and if people don't honor that, you pull the plug on them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't know. I think that would be a neat idea. I mean, just as Burning Man is this wonderful canvas for thousands of people to try on the word artist on themselves, I think the Bay Lights could be a great canvas for an awful lot of people as well.
I like your concept. I think it would be hard to make that fly. But I like it. I think that would be really cool. It'd be worth an experiment.
I'm not saying it's easy to make it fly. I'm saying that conceptually it makes sense, and I think in the name of fairness it makes sense too. It is a publicly created entity.
Sure.
Mark Benioff can have whatever he wants on the Salesforce Tower because he built the building, right? Well, no private entity built the Bay Bridge. That was built with public funds. It should be a publicly utilized entity.
Sure. What do you think about that piece on top of the Salesforce Tower?
Well, I don't want to, hurt anyone's feelings, but
everybody has a right to an opinion.
I find it uninspiring. I find it very, very just kind of blobs of color moving around on a very, very, very diffused context. I'm not seeing much that's interesting.
I like the concept as a canvas, but I think that I agree with you.
What is the concept?
The concept is a diffused LED display surface,
and that's always been Jim Campbell's thing. If you look at, I've looked him up, right there. He has a piece in a airport somewhere, which is a whole like 100-foot line of diffused panels overhead in a corridor, and he has silhouettes of people swimming.
I think that's very inspired, actually.
I know. Well, I think that's a brilliant piece.
But I think that the Salesforce Tower is... The content that they display on it is not very inspiring. It's kind of, like you said, block content.
Well, that's what I said, yeah.
But it's got so much potential. Like, if it was me, I would do a generative piece on that.
Right.
Do some really cool generative content.
I know. Well, so would I.
That's why I love the Bay Bridge.
And if Mark Benioff is listening to us here, hey, you can find my contact info in this, and you can find Rob's too. We would love to do that. And actually, I've never met the guy, but I think that of all the people out there, he would be interested in getting more artists involved.
Well, I think that whether it's that or something else, honestly, I'm very into the idea of pushing forward and creating new. I'm into the generation, the creation of cool canvases. Right. Is where my personal interest lies. It would be cool to make content for that thing, but in the end, it's a thing that already exists. And
right, but the thing is, it's not often that a multi-million-dollar canvas on top of a God knows how many story tall tower, those don't pop up very often. I mean, they do in Hong Kong, but they don't here.
I was just gonna say, man, I think the term is architainment, and it's kind of blowing up right now.
Not in the United States, but probably everywhere else.
It is, though. It's blowing up everywhere. Yeah, it is.
Really?
I mean, as an industry, it's coming into its own, and it's one part architectural lighting design, it's one part theatrical design, using the tools of the stage. It's using sensors. It's integrating a whole lot of disparate industries and bringing those tools into like a whole new practice. Mm-hmm. And we're all playing in that practice right now. You are, I am, Obscura is, was. Mm-hmm. We just come at it from different angles.
Right. I love to have new canvases, but as I said, they're big ones like that don't come along very often. And hell, I keep making them. I'm making canvases all the time.
Yeah, I love your pieces, man. They're so cool. They're very kinetic, and that's something. White Void out of Berlin. You should look them up. They're very cool. They do kinetic light sculpture, and but it's not persistence. It's not persistence of vision. It's they have software that they've written that controls motors, and they'll take lighting fixtures and put them on an array of motors. So they'll have 50 by 20 motors, so hundreds of motors, and they'll put a pixel on the end of each motor, and they'll create waveforms with those motors.
Oh, I've seen that.
Yeah,
I've seen that.
And then they have a piece where they basically take the exact XYZ position of each fixture on the end of those motors, and they hit that with a laser. So it's like a plastic orb on the end of each winch, and then they illuminate those orbs with a laser. So it's just the most crazy geometrical lighting performance. Brilliant.
Well, thanks. It's funny. I don't dispute at all that you're saying that you see me as a kinetic sculptor. I'm getting into that again, which is kind of funny because, in 2000 I made Spin, crude technology, but basically I'm making very similar pieces right now with much, much higher technology. But most of my pieces are not spinning. That's a really new thing.
Yeah, I mean, just since we've really known each other as artists. It's funny because I was trying to figure out how I know you, and I think it is through Rhythm Society.
I think it's actually through Lumen Labs. I was invited to a party here.
Our opening party.
The opening party.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure we met then.
Maybe.
And then I actually got my first commission at that party, or after
Did you
that
really?
party.
That's how we got the Jungle Animals. Did you know that?
Yeah, well, it was Garrett Camp.
Yeah.
He hired me to make, just straight up rectangular panels.
That's right.
And I made those for him one year, and then you made the animal vehicles for him the next year.
Yeah. Interesting guy. Interesting camp that Galactic Jungle is.
Well, what I liked about Galactic Jungle is it didn't look like a pay-to-play camp. It looked like just a bunch of kids in a camp. Well, maybe not the year. The year I was there, it looked like just a bunch of normal people. And then I, found out later that, okay, yeah, there's someone who's paid to cook, and there's a couple of people paid to set up. And
it definitely walks that fine line between
but I like that. It's I like it that people can have it be, can have the luxury they want to pay for, but not have it be ostentatious. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And Star Roadhouse is a great example of that as well.
Never camp with them. I've always wanted to have an inside view.
Well, just go and say hello, right?
Well, I know people who camp with them too. So
yeah, so there you go. I mean, the year that I got to know them, there was a guy named Jamie Vida who made a couple of art cars for him, and I didn't work on those LEDs, but my technology ended up on them, so I was kind of involved. And he took me, he just showed me around. Amazing camp. What was really nice about it was that there was not one bit that was off limits to just normal people.
Yeah.
Not one bit.
That's cool.
And they had set up an entire camp just for the Sherpas. And then there was another big lounge for the Sherpas, and then there was also a lounge for the guests. But you know what? The Sherpas preferred hanging out in the Sherpa camp, and it was rattier, but it was just as comfortable.
Yeah.
And so it was very nicely done. And I actually ran into David Bonderman one year, and I said, I just want to compliment you on doing this right.
So having been part of a number of camps like that, I always find it a little bit. I think that the fundamental problem with camps that hire people to build and run said camps is that the people who come in to work the camp, right, are fundamentally different personality types than the people who come to play without working at those same camps. And I think that it creates the potential for a class system within a camp.
Potential? It's absolutely a class.
Well, it doesn't have to be, because last year I camped with the Sanctuary camp, and it totally blew my mind, man. It was like everybody, it was like a big family, and it was cool. And the patron was cool. And he came out to Burning Man with us a week before Burn, helped us build that car, and made us breakfast every morning, like himself.
That's just awesome.
Yeah, he's a very unique guy. But to contrast that, whatever that camp is that got banned this year, and then the camp, I feel like I understand that camp because I camped with a similar camp doing art cars previous years, and it was very much this kind of weird, we're your bosses and you are our employees and you will work for us and do what we say. And it's like, yes, they did hire us, and yes, they kind of felt like shitty people.
Right.
It was like, I would never want to camp with these kids.
It became extremely clear that year of Caravansicle, the notorious, bad, pay-to-play camp, that when you have that context. All right, I'll use your word. The potential for setting up a class system is definitely there. Because not only do you have an upper class that doesn't lift a goddamn finger, you have an underclass which is there to work. Now, I'm pretty sure almost every camp has, gives people days off and nights off, right? But you're not free. You're not there to do what you want. You're there to earn money or at least break even and serve the upper class. And I think that is a fundamental problem with a fundamental threat to the Burning Man culture. And
it's a departure from the ethos of Burning Man. Well, radical self-reliance.
Yeah, right? Radical self-reliance among other things. And
I think that's why it tastes so bad.
Oh yeah, and I'm really, really glad that Marion sent out that message this year saying, well, we're really concerned about Burning Man culture, but it's kind of like, what took you so long?
Yeah, that ship has sailed, my friend.
What took you so long?
I don't see a way back from that. I honestly don't. What are you going to do? Say, no more wealthy people can come to Burning Man? It's you can't do that.
No, what they can do is this. What they've been doing is they've made it so that if you're willing to spend $1,200 per ticket, you can get as many tickets as you want as late as July, no questions asked. That's what existed up until and not including this year. That's one of the things that Marion said they're ending. You can still get these super expensive tickets, but they're only available in this very, very early window of time. It's probably over by now. So they're making it so that you can't just get lots of tickets if you're willing to spend a lot of money. Why is that important? Well, in my opinion, I've never run one of these camps, but these like $20,000 a head camps, but I would think that if you were to charge some guy $20,000 a head to be in this camp, you can't turn around and say to him, oh, by the way, you need to get a ticket.
Sure.
Right? So this business of selling high-priced tickets, no questions asked, no hassle at all, fundamentally created the pay-to-play camp industry. So therefore, now that they're not doing it, it's going to put stresses on all those camps. And I imagine a bunch of them are going to go out of business. There are some camps, for example, Star Roadhouse and Frozen Oasis, that definitely provide services. They probably got directed tickets, but they're not going to be able to buy those $1,200 tickets anymore. So it is going to be a little bit of a, what do you call it? Where some of the camps won't be around.
Yeah.
The other thing that Burning Man has done
that's good. Shake it up a little bit.
I know, totally. No, this is why the message that Marion sent out is not empty at all. The other thing that they've been doing is they started off with this little tiny program called Outside Services, because they were noticing that some camps were starting to bring in semi-trucks worth of stuff, and they said, you know what, it would be better if they went through a different gate and kind of had a different system. So they started up this system, and then of course once every caterer who wants to make a Burning Man camp heard about it, oh yeah, there's Outside Services, we don't need to, we can have it be bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And so now they're trying to cut back on Outside Services. They're trying to make it be not such a big thing. How they're doing that, I'm not exactly sure. So they have done things to facilitate the erosion of the Burning Man ethos, and this year they may be starting to undo those things.
Oh,
we'll keep our fingers crossed.
Are you gonna go this year?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
No, I've got tickets. I've got an honorarium. I've got a camp. Basically, I've got myself in a situation where if I didn't go, I would have a lot of very upset friends.
See, man, that's the situation I don't want to be in. I'm not going this year.
I can't really complain to be in the situation.
No,
it's very fun to be able to provide a lot of people with a really good camp, a stable source of tickets. It's great.
I think it's totally legit to be in that position. I think that for me, I am generally producing an art piece, so I have a lot of responsibility, and that art piece is very seldom my own art piece. It's not on my shoulders alone. So this year, for example, we're doing 2 art cars. I'm not going out to the Burning Man to see them run, and I'm happy about that.
I know you've told me that, and that's great.
I'm going traveling this year.
That's great.
I'll go back next year, man. Burning Man will probably be there. So
probably, I think it'll be fascinating if it isn't. I mean, to see what happens. I do not think that long term Burning Man has a chance of dying, even if for some reason this particular org, stops doing it. Somebody else will.
It's an American institution.
Yeah, somebody else will start it, and that would have the potential for a lot of positivity too. It's like total fresh blood.
Well, if you look at culturally what's happening in the world, Burning Man is a huge factor in the cultural landscape of the world right now, and it's interesting. I don't even know if you can call it counterculture anymore. I mean, it's not mainstream, but it is a lot less countercultural than it was even 5 to 10 years ago.
Absolutely, so. And nothing makes that point better than the fact that when the Smithsonian Burning Man show opened, they set attendance records in the first months. I don't know how it was by the end of the show, but I mean, people all over, people visiting DC and people living in DC, they all wanted to go see it, and people got inspired. People got inspired by the blank canvas thing. This is kind of relatively well-known story of a 92-year-old woman who's like big time society matron, lived her whole life in DC, quite wealthy. Got so turned on by the show that she first had a LED outfit made. Oh God! And then she ended up going out to Burning Man last year with her kids at the age of 92. I was told which camp she was, and I told that she was in a camp that it was a pay to play camp, but their shtick was we serve Bloody Marys. So she was serving Bloody Marys one morning, and I talked with her a little bit, and it was great.
That's cool. It's always nice to see people's mind blown.
Right. She got her mind blown. And she's bringing her energy to Burning Man now. Will she go back again? Who knows? Her kids were complaining about how much the camp cost, so they might not do that again. I just yesterday, or was it this morning? Either yesterday or this morning, got an email from a guy named David Brown, who is the curator of the Smithsonian show in Cincinnati. They set attendance records on their opening night in Cincinnati. Yeah. Cincinnati is a very straight place, and they set attendance records.
Well, that's the thing. I don't think there is any area or any city in the country that doesn't have some kind of Burning Man community. I don't. I've been all over the place when I was touring, and I was always able to find burners in every city. And this was 8 years ago.
Wow. Yeah. I have a friend who's on the board of the Modern Art Museum in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, and she was telling me that they were really, that the other people on the board are like super psyched that she's a big-time Burning Man participant and she works on my pieces. Yeah. And I'm like, really? They value that. That's great. That's fantastic.
That's cool, man. Yeah. Do you want to take a 5... What's your time? Like, do you got to get out of here?
I kind of feel like we just kind of came to a little conclusion.
Okay, cool.
And I'd like to go back home to my family, if that's all right with you.
Yeah, that's totally fine.
I totally enjoyed it, but I feel like I kind of talked myself out.
Cool. Well, I'm glad you came on. This has been fun.
Yeah. Well, it certainly got far afield from LEDs and stuff.
That's what this is all about. Yeah. I mean, this is great because I feel like we dove deep into Burning Man and the cultural landscape of Burning Man where it is right now, and that's cool.
Yeah, and hopefully didn't offend anyone.
Whatever.
Here's an idea. I'd love to do this again anytime you want. Somehow I got the impression that you were going to. It wasn't going to be just me. It was going to be like a group of people.
Oh no, I've only done one-on-ones.
Right. I think it would be actually fun to have 3 or more with more beer.
Gonna have to get more microphones.
A little cooler, right. But just kind of like, but have it be, because there's something about more than 2 where someone says, oh yeah, that reminds me of this. And then
I know, man. Yeah. It's hard, from an editing standpoint, it's hard. Yeah. Everybody's talking over everybody, and it's a nightmare to edit. But
that might be fun, though.
It might be.
Might be fun. Anyway, I'm happy to do this again anytime, and if you want, especially if you want to do a little group.
Cool. I'm into it, man. Thanks again.
All right, thank you.